Jerry.
Hey, Harry. Hey, Jerry.
Thanks for joining us. This is our 50th poetry show. Jerry Garcia will read first, and then Doug Knott, both imaginative poets. Jerry Garcia is a poet from Los Angeles, California. He spent his childhood fearing the bomb during the Cold War, was a teenager during the fabled Summer of Love, and studied communication arts at Loyola Marymount University during Richard Nixon's Watergate era. He is too old to have been named after the Grateful Dead guitar hero, but likes to think he rocks just the same. These are the circumstances that inform his writing with references to pop culture and mid-20th century history. He is a retired editor and producer of trailers for motion pictures and award-winning television commercials. He has published 2 books of poetry, On Summer Solstice Road and Hitchhiking with the Guilty. His latest book, Trumpets in the Sky, is forthcoming from Moontide Press. He lives in Studio City with his wife, Becky, and their comedic dog, Jaffe Ryder. Jerry's poetry is personal, loving, precise. Here's a marvelous poet, Jerry Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you, Harry. Great to be visiting with the people of the MPTF today, despite the video conferencing. But are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a poem called, I just lost it, excuse me, technology. Okay, this first poem is called Debit Credit. They say she's a credit card junkie, but I don't care. I slop some poetry onto the sidewalk underneath the awning of my cash-only establishment. Words spill like sewage into the gutter. She says, wow, like you're really deep. So I take her credit and watch my uninsured account decline like so many pennies on the dollar. That night, I take her tab home with me. She's appreciative, though. My interest inflates like old Federal Reserve notes. We regain consciousness in the morning, and with the dubious wisdom of having made love on a futon, I say, sweetie, why don't you move in? 3 hours later, I've got a mop and a broom, a closet full of clothes, and we're selling my drums on eBay. Thank you. Let's see. Sorry, I'm getting my technology. Okay, here's a poem about jazz. So a lot of my influences are the beats and the jazz people. And so this is something I wrote it quite a while ago. It's called At the Jazz Lounge. Women torch with their eyes, croon in the key of angel, shaded cheekbones, resonating pitch, scatting cleavage riffs. Hi-hat walks in time, poet songstress digs in rhyme. Deep in a velvet lounge, vibraphone plinks and clangs sprinkle over candled tables. Young saloon girls cackle their inebriation, hiding from the eyes of the vocalist's persuasion. Made-up dolls sensually loll with fruity bartender blends, disguising the truth of intoxication with rum, corn syrup, broken bits of ice. The boys settle the heat with real drinks, Corona, tequila, scotch and soda highballs. They swipe their hair-gelled manes, extending upper torsos in preening lounge lizard struts. Meantime, a jazz disciple giggling to metered beats and cross rhythms ignores the pre-coital cocktail scene. Bartenders replenish, waitresses hand off, pickup artists pass the time because their dates are nodding out. The band keeps on trading fours, ivories, triads, skins turn around, bass strings pull, a tenor man's blowing hot. No one's leaving tonight because the jazzman and the chanteuse maintain trilling into a summery midnight air. And Harry mentioned that I was in the motion picture advertising business for most of my life. I started off as a projectionist, a 35 millimeter film projectionist. And so this poem kind of inspired that. It's called Filmmaking 101. A smoky, dark cutting room, leggy film strips hang on wires like so much laundry drying on tarnished clotheslines, swaying in a sizzling ceiling fan breeze, like the ball gown of a willowy ingenue, red carpet iconography. The moviola clatters like grandmother's sewing machine, stitching images into a cinematic quilt, peddling each picture forward and back, needling lives of strangers, fabricating intimate tales and transitory personal relationships. In shadows of James Wong Howe, heels on marble distort a 3-inch speaker. The cutter draws grease pencil marks over broken seams, revealing lives at 24 frames per second, pacing apprehension with a razor blade and mylar tape. If it were Monday, a porcelain-faced woman might be refraining from shooting that second bullet. If it were Wednesday, the reluctant protagonist would be digging a bullet from the bloody flesh of a resistance soldier. On Thursday, a blaring car horn sounds over confusing streets. The tortured woman expires. Vintage convertibles, clipped, patterned detective jargon, deceit and murder on dark Los Angeles boulevards, starring the likes of Missy the Queen Stanwyck, Lauren, put your lips together, Bacall, Faye, my sister, my daughter, Dunaway. In all accounts, protected by trickster-turned-victim McMurray, the brooding double-crossed bogey, and forget-it Jake Nicholson. Stylist imagery unwinds from film can to screen, our monotonous breaths meshing with the lives of saints. Thank you. My next poem is a series of poems from the new book, which is coming out at the end of this year from Mutai Press, and it is called Trumpets in the Sky. Through scattered clouds, pink and thin, silver jets spark yearnings for adventure. Power lines scratch back strokes on cobalt. The full glide of a Cooper's hawk casts gray shadows before its talons hook the wire. A bluff side turns orange with twilight, lovers' hands silhouette in promise as the remaining sun rays mute. Distant aircraft reflect the blaze of further western time zones. Late for home, sparrows bullet toward shelter. Incandescent fragments open across the valley. Neon signs glow on street travelers riding roadsters. Outside of passion grow, outlines of passion grow opaque against the evening sky. Diamond stars dress the blue-black curtain that introduces the obvious moon. Are you flying tonight? Jet engines strain to gain lift, whining like a holiday pinwheel. I wonder if you are the pilot. For so long, you were the lens on my camera. Together, we twisted focus. You added the filter, I measured the light. But now, an automatic switch makes it easy for me to snap a view. I watched your flight through a local focal lens. I watched your flight through a long focal lens as you fuselage climbs to a high angle through the clouds, heading into the forever blue. this poem. This poem I wrote on a long ride home from Ventura County one night. I mean, I didn't write it. I thought of it while I was driving. The images and the ideas came to me, and it's called Human Touch. Headlights followed me like a jet squadron in formation. 4 lanes, 8 lights, blurring from my exhaustion, eyes reverting from rear view eyes reverting from rear view to red glowing dots ahead. When darkness came down like a curtain drawn, no lampposts, no cars, no reflections, completely opaque, like Sister Margaret Mary's story about the world's end. I became weightless, a sprite in ocean air. My vehicle no longer carried me. I became awash in crashing waves. The sea was black with white caps. Was it the moonlight or a patrolman's flashlight? I might have been floating. I might have been flying. You found me in a hospital days after, you said. I might have been in outer space attempting inventory on countless stars, or maybe there were specks of sand at the bottom of the briny deep. You didn't have a clue where I had gone, but fed the dog and tended to the roses while waiting. You could be holding my hand right now, or I might be attached to a comet, hurtling through the galaxy long before the earth held water or human touch came to be. This poem is a weather-related poem called All That Is Left of the Rain. We don't see that much down here where I am, but it's pretty dramatic when we do. All that's left of the rain. Cumulus clouds shadow the eastern horizon. Hostile storms rumble forward with the ferocity of a Mahler symphony. Under amber desk light, I try to illuminate this mood of apprehension. I give it a name like that aerial display outside my window. Raindrops drum the skylight with discordant rhythms, as if conducted by a distracted maestro. None of my prompting yields results sublime as the rain. When tats and thumps stop thrashing on the roof, gray clouds glow with the burn of blocked sun. All that is left of the rain are decomposing leaves. And this is the title poem from my current book. It's called On Summer Solstice Road. We beg the air for moisture, drink bottled rations promised to the next mile, and try to soothe the grief of scorched limbs, blistered feet. Sandblasted panoramas, degrading paths, and broken posts discourage our journey. Sage wilts, cactus stoops, power lines corrode, humor fails. The wheeze grows heavy, our vision strains, knees seize like rusted gates, sheer sand dunes snicker at the chaos. Sweat may as well be blood, streaks on rocks and bones, artifacts crushed to gravel by the heavy-footed compression of many generations. We look for a better horizon, but nothing protects us from the unforgiving greed of a prolonged summering sun. We rupture and collapse from futile attempts to rebuild our dried out oasis. Nothing, not even the stalwart yucca, stands a chance against quixotic winds from what might be giants. So thank you, Harry. This was a great time. I've got one more poem to read. It's one of my Hollywood poems. As I said, I spent a lot of time as a film editor and then post-production supervisor. And you see a lot of things when you're driving the streets of Hollywood. Now, this is called, for all you actors out there, who I hope you like this. It's called Kids with Sides. Even the skinny kids wear their shirt tails out, so shirt-tailed, stocky guys still look fat. On a sidewalk in Hollywood next to the Strasbourg Theater, actors, children really, read sides, recite with emotion words written for an older generation. I sneak through their rehearsal, pastrami, sandwich, French fry lunch, wicking through my bag. The hungry flock of students bleat with vegan indignation. Thank you.
I loved your poetry, and the human touch was very vivid and touching. And also the last one, the Hollywood poem, was fabulous. I would like to ask you a couple of questions. When
Sure.
did you write your first poem?
Oh my, I think I wrote my first poem in like 7th grade. And it was I went to a Catholic school, and there was this nun that was really big on poetry, and you know, of course, it was the Jabberwock and Robert Service and stuff like that she taught us. But I kind of expanded from there, and then I really didn't write any more poetry until after. I wrote some things in high school and college that were kind of weak. We didn't have the kind of college poetry education now. I mean, then that they have now, the MFAs and everything. But I will tell you, my English 101 teacher was Carolyn C. And actually, I'm sorry, my English 101 was Lee Rossi. And he suggested I take Carolyn C. for my second year. And so there's two examples of how to write. So I really picked up poetry again after I left, after my first wife and I divorced, and I decided to go back to school, and I ended up in a UCLA extension class to get used to the classroom. And the class was Laurel Ann Bogan teaching beginning poetry, and I just kept writing poetry and didn't look back. That was about 1998.
I love Carolyn C. I knew her a little bit, and I was real sad when she passed on.
Yeah.
She told me one time that she read, when she was working on her thesis at UCLA, she read 500 novels about Hollywood. Her thesis was related to that, but she always was such a good person, and she would write me cards and invite me to gatherings and all that. So I always loved her. She was one of the top 4 reviewers at the LA Times during her time, along with Robert Kirsch and Holly Prado. And also there was another woman there, I forget her name. Wendy, what is it about poetry, Jerry, that attracts you to it?
Well, I grew up the son of a photographer, and he taught me what he knew about photography, and that led me especially my generation, wanting to be in motion pictures. And I was in college when you were doing a lot of great movies with Scorsese, it was, so I was a photographer, and then I went into filmmaking, and it just seemed to be a natural progression. I tried writing screenplays, and it was just too much shifting and formatting on the typewriter. And poetry became cool. It became a thing when I'd come home from work, and I worked long hours, and I'd come home and I wished I could do some photography, but it was night and I couldn't. And I kind of learned that what poetry is that combination of film editing and visuals and music that go into filmmaking. And so that's what I can just do it on paper. I can just sit down on a computer, and, editing poetry is like editing films, just moving images around and, finding the rhythms and music to go with it.
I always love your precision in your images and how you put them together. What high school did you go to?
I went to Loyola High School out here in LA. So I was taught by Jesuits.
Is that in the same area where the university is?
No, the high school is actually almost downtown LA. It's like it's at Venice area near what is now called Koreatown. And, the university's out in Playa, in the marina.
Who are some of the poets who have influenced you?
Oh, well, I had to, start with, the great Ferlinghetti, who we just lost. And I like to think that first poem I wrote, I kind of like that to like be an ode to Ferlinghetti. At the beginning, like E.E. Cummings really grabbed me when I was talking about when I was in high school. When I first read E.E. Cummings, it was like, wow, what the way he laid a poem out on the page, and theoretically broke the rules of the capitalization and the like, and so that I think was the first thing that gave me an idea of that words can be an image on the page. So I like to say those two, like James Dickey. Boy, it's just like you asked me that question, I should have a list with me, because every time I ask that question, it's like, we'll turn this off, then I'll remember 15 people.
You said you made a living, and I know your work in the movie business, editing commercials and TV commercials and films and TV shows. Did you go to film school and get a degree at film school?
Yes, I went to Loyola Marymount to study film.
Was Charles Champlin there when you were there?
Yes, he was. Yeah. He, I don't think I ever took his class. I vaguely remember going into the screenings that he had, but I don't know if I actually, got a grade from him.
Did you make films, short films at Loyola?
I did. I made, I first made a Super 8 film, which I barely remember the subject, but I found it the other day in a box. My next film, we did a partner and I did a film about a big ball, a big Renaissance ball, and the court jester ending up with the maid of honor, with the maid. It was kind of like just kind of a satirical ripoff on those kind of movies.
Talking about movies, what are some of your favorite films that you've enjoyed over the years?
Oh, well, my favorite movie of all times, for a lot of various reasons. I won't say it's the best, but my favorite movie is The Caine Mutiny. And, I love a whole bunch of movies. I mean, you're on that. You're in about 3 or 4 of those movies that were my favorite. I remember seeing The Taxi Driver all by myself in the theater in Westwood when it first came out, and just thinking, wow, this is not the films that my parents used to take me to, But I like variety films. I like Charade, The Last Picture Show, the various movies of the 70s, The Conversation, Godfather, Goodfellas, of course. I'm pretty eclectic with what I like movie wise. I saw a movie called 10 Things I Hate About You, which was Heath Ledger's first movie. And it was a teenage movie. I'm going, wow, this is fun.
You're a little bit younger than me. Did you edit film and then you had to make the transition to digital, or were you in digital already?
No, when I started that first job as projectionist at ad agency Ogilvy and Mather right out of college. So that was 1976. And I was projecting film. Then I became an assistant editor, and I was editing 35 millimeter film and had a movie flatbeds, and did that for, I think 10 years until I started editing videotape and then digital.
Well, when you write a poem, does your vision, do you see the words and images visually, or what comes to you while you're writing a poem? If I can I know it's probably more than just one thing, but could you just talk a little bit about how you might write a poem? For example, like the Hollywood poem, the last one you read, Kids with Sides. How did that come about? Was that purely seeing all that, or how did that arrive?
That particular one was a combination of several things. One is I drove down those streets all the time back in those days where there's several workshops, and all around the Strasbourg. And then I took one, not at Strasbourg, but a friend of mine, guy I haven't seen in a long time, but he used to teach acting classes, and he said to come in and audit it. And I thought he meant just to sit there and watch it, because at the time he knew I was trying to write a screenplay and the like. And he pulled me into it. He handed me some sides, and I had to do a thing, and I kind of enjoyed it. So I got the feeling, and it was just that whole thing where I kind of felt like a fish out of water. I was at that time older. I won't say considerably older, but I was older than a lot of the students in that class. So that just came to me, was that vision, and having been in it and having seen it, and then I think at that very time, I think I have the line about how it started being a fashion to wear your shirt untucked and open with the t-shirt on, and I thought, well, this is cool because it kind of makes your lines look different, and I don't look as heavy as I am. But then it just became a style, and everybody was doing it, so I still look fatter than other people.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry. I love your poetry, and you're a wonderful person, and thank you for that. And also, our next poet is Doug Knott. Doug Knott has been writing and performing poetry in Southern California for many years. He is the author of the collection Small Dogs Bark Cartoons, various chapbooks, and is included in the Outlaw Poetry Bible. He was a member of the seminal touring poetry performance troupe, the Karma Bums, and created poetry videos which played on broadcast TV. He has hosted many poetry reading series, and during the time 2013 to 2017, was president of the Board of Trustees of Beyond Broke Literary Arts Foundation in LA. A video of his poem, Sunset Strip Self-Improvement Affirmations, was recently shown at several shorts film festivals. Doug Knott, an acute and witty chronicler of pop culture, American history, politics, and his own personal journey, is a superb storyteller. He's a wonderful poet, Doug Knott.
Well, listen, thanks, Harry, and what a pleasure to hear both your poetry, Jerry, and also that great interview. Who knew, So, and thank you, Harry, and to our audience there at the MPTF. I've had the pleasure of being taken around the campus by Harry pointing out trees. So I looked to see if I had a tree poem, but I don't. I have references to trees. Okay, Harry. So, and Jerry, many things came up. I knew a guy in Canada that collected 35 millimeter cameras. He had like 25 of them, and he was the tech on this theater show I did. So I've seen the hall of the past. Anyway, let me begin with the poem dedicated to my wife, Janet, who just may be on this webinar. And it's called The Tantric Orchard. I am so lucky to have found this orchard with you in it. Under the soil, our roots embrace like small animals driven underground. The twisted branches of the apple trees reach back to touch their thighs. Such springtime muscles shot off this green cannonball of earth. Lie on the wet grass with me. Like fruit, we swell and rub against each other, kiss like raindrops in the milky sunlight. Grasping roots inside you, I will transplant them in a shrine, alive with wet green dripping things that shake themselves awake. And I will visit you with blue lakes and reckless hills, and we will watch the big white summer birds fly by like abandoned opportunities searching for their season. Around us, black grappling branches orchestrate the air, which parts and endlessly parts again. The whole orchard ripples in a soft green chord where the land ends and the feelings begin. Thank you. I've mixed up some new babies that I've got oldies, goodies, and newbies. So, all right, we're jumping in the bathtub on this. This is called 2020 Homeschooling Myself. I wanted to contain the sky, but the self-help books said I already contained the sky, even though I felt half full. So I went with halfway down the stairs to explore death. And I saw that very guy with his tacky black wheelbarrow standing at the bottom. Thumbs up, he said. See you in a while, yo. Try to have a good time. Social distancing is lonely. Home is creative detention. I pound tiny fists on a Mac keyboard with ideas thick as a cornfield about our national conniption and decline, which I believe is dialectical movement of history. Like, after we've had it good, we've got to have it bad. And my efforts are futile, except the good lung exercise, shouting to liberal friends on the phone. And my wife deplores my athletic trips to the grocery store, where I buy meat in big plastic container boxes that are themselves a symbol of why our fossil fuel society cannot endure. People on TV are asking, what was this year 2020? Only metaphors can comprehend abstractions, like what's inside a lump of time, the way we make circles with our minds. I am defying gravity by talking on this page. What do you do for kicks? Ha ha ha. So what a pleasure. I'm having fun in my own home. This just cuts out the driving time, this stuff, right? So I'm gonna read, gee whiz, I'm gonna read just an adventure poem. I write poems about things and places. And this is about Mount Whitney. And one of my private creds for myself is I lumbered up that mountain, which we know is the very high mountain here in California. It's 15,000 feet almost. And it's one of my big leg and pelvic muscle achievements in life to do that. So, I mean, I'm humble. I had to train before I did that. So this is called Queen of Thin Air, Mount Whitney Summit. Near the summit, people far apart move slowly as if underwater, express surprise that I am so old and still a grunting body, a hyperventilating machine made of mortal sticks, willpower pellets, lust and forgotten lust, gray matter to run the heavy dogs of worry in, muscles that hold personal traumas, and a desire for transcendence from it all, or I wouldn't even be here. Stuck like a stick man or insect on God's bulletin board beyond clouds, where so very clear is scary. a speck of living gland hanging forward off the postcard without a scaffold, amid twisted spires of rocks and long way down to bargain basement realizations that I was so stupid to be here and foolish, like in tarot card number 1, pursuing a casual agenda on this jagged stairway to a tremulous afterlife. Oh, day, dark blue and disappearing in giddy distance, mountains 80 miles away, clear as exclamation points amid big, bold text of sky. Toy feet stick off concrete stilts called legs, which lift and crook up rock and more rock, which goes sideways in shards of shimmering granite, long as office buildings. A spaceship of stone, ribbed in ice, and me outside, desperate for air. I inhale a breath, thin as rock is thick, trillions of tons socked all around me with oxygen that whisks away every time breath reaches for it, needy as a jump rope. On this narrow path, hung like a necklace around the stony spine, braced against the shelf with my free hand, I don't dare take my eyes from feet and rock and look through my camera lens. It dangles like a heavy pendulum. I look up and stare far upstairs at the cobalt heights, bearing the birdless blue smile of the queen of thin air from her great vacuum heights, where endless residential souls intone. Welcome to Vertigo, the state without any boundaries at all. Okay. Thank you. I have a pleasure reading these things. And okay, I'm going to read. Let's see. Looking at this thing. I wrote another new poem, which I read once, and it has a little explanation. I asked someone if they knew the Bay of Fundy. They said they didn't. Well, the Bay of Fundy is the place in Canada with the Atlantic Ocean where the tide goes down 60 feet twice a day. It's the biggest tide jump in the world. And you get down there and the water kind of comes over your feet in about 30 seconds. Anyway, this is not about the Bay of Fundy, but it's called, Did You Say Astral Projection? I never went out of body till I partied with my law school roommates and crashed on top of my bed, curled up and drunk as a bat. In the middle of the night, I awoke, suspended above that bed and floating down the hallway, bumping lightly on the ceiling. I enjoyed a quiet thrill of motion, like I was a living but invisible cloud. I had feelings and could see things with eyes I didn't seem to have. The blazing light bulb, now looming up like Jupiter, still dangled from its cord, and I beheld great waves of cracked beige upper wall paint from very close up. This was no dream. I went bump against the wall like a rubber elephant in a swimming pool that is also a cage. At the top of the brown kitchen door, I blew up with fear in great yellow lightning bolts lashing against my dirigible of air. Where was I doing this thinking? I did some quick throbs against the ceiling, and my blood sucked down in panic like the lowest tide of the Bay of Fundy. And I deeply feared I would never, ever get back into my beloved body. I inhabited the searing loneliness of a fetus, naked and tumbling in outer space. So I shouted to my essence, stop this experience. And in an instant, I was back over my own body, under me and still in bed, curled up like a coat I had just put down, and I snapped back into my flesh and was again secure. Such is the fear of permanent nowhere. When I hear infrequently of astral projection, I smile slightly to myself. The earth is my mother, and I'm not going anywhere. My world might well end with a personal black hole, and no details about me will ever get out. There's a doorway where everybody finally goes out into the yard, and whether the grass is green or brown, I'll find out. But in the meantime, I'm going to stay in bed. And I did. Listen, I'm looking at my clock. Let me read. I'm going to read. I seem to have a metaphysical slant, whether it's accurate or not. This one is a travel poem. I lived in Brazil for a year, and I hung out, so to speak. This was in the 70s, actually late 60s. And as I say, just before the dictatorship came down. And so this is about, there's cults, which people have heard of Santeria, right? So things like that, which are African-based religious cults, exist in Brazil behind the Catholic Church, okay? So this is one of those movements, if you ever saw, you movie folks have seen Black Orpheus or Orfeo Negro, is kind of about that type of scene. So this is called Lesson in Conversational Portuguese, and I will translate. After a prayer meeting with the spurting of chicken blood in the dusty and livid interior of Brazil, the father of the saints, Pai dos Santos, who had killed the chicken earlier that afternoon, took a liking to me. Você tem o preconceito místico? Are you of the mystical persuasion? Tenho sim, I said. Sure, of course, dude. Então, eu só faço bem. I just do good, he said in a juicy Morse code flicker of offering that raced over my heart like a fleet of gazelles. Mas se você quiser mal, if you want the bad stuff, I know someone who can help. I declined with some regret at opportunity lost in the quick tropical sunset, reversed and flat like a bed sheet, but I had respect for this father of Umbanda, like the toad has for the wheel. Você tem o preconceito místico. On the chair, my hands shook like bamboo. Of course, I've seen the fountains go out in someone's eyes. In the struggle under the skin, I negotiate with the runaway heart. In Brazil, I got into a big taxi cab and got the hell out of there. When I got far away, I felt backwards behind me, and he was still there, a faint lamp on a dark street. And in my wallet was a fresh card that did not exist. It said, Eu só faço bem. I only do good. So I'm going to read, I like Jerry's music poems, so I brought up a couple here. I have two creds. Jerry's a Garcia, but I'm born in the same day as Keith Richard, same year. And I also went to Woodstock by chance. Like when you go to something like that, the concert, you don't know it's going to be famous when you go. You just, pop a few pills and go, right? So this is called The Guitar Spangled Banner. It's about, I guess it's about Woodstock. Now let us speak of the death of rock stars. Sid Vicious paid for his myth. Jim Morrison posed for his. Brian Jones turned himself into a pillar of stiff water. Jimi Hendrix was just too hot to live. I felt inside my chest, see if anything was still there, or maybe I had left it at Woodstock, NY in 1969, when life overflowed the cup from surface tension and yet didn't spill. Oh, how reality smoked at half-mast when Hendrix played the Star-Spangled Banner with notes so strung out you could hang flags off them. While the sun rose like a nuclear guitar and his heart broke into edible confetti for us conquering heroes of the new world dawning. What that would be, that would never be. That we could never come back from, in spite of what all the bitter people who tried to come back later said. And in the middle of this single Moon Man guitar solo, I heard cannons of welcome booming for the new king of the hollow earth. I did hear that, and it was great. And I was muddy and probably not very conscious. So I'm gonna just read a couple more. I want to read this one. I guess it's on the same type of wavelength as some of these others. That is a little bit, let's say, things that go bump in the night. Anyway, this is an older poem. I used to tour around with a wonderful group of friends that we had call it a poetry performance group. We were called the Karma Bums. And so as a group, we went and did a gig in Taos, New Mexico in the day. And this poem is called Where This World Meets the Next. The lady who had cancer and wanted to write her life down in a book, clear and in memory of herself, had a husband long and soft as a noodle, and a friend who talked dimension shifts and easy travel to other planets with the gleam of warlock in his eye, while my stomach walked the other way. We were traveling poets, recording the universe, and the lady who had cancer took us out to see the cross of the penitentes, the men who beat themselves bloody for Christ. And I'm going to extemporize for a sec. Around Taos, in locations that no one tells you about, are these crosses that are about 20 feet tall. Maybe there's 3 or 4 of them. And in ceremonies a couple of times a year, these penitentes, which are a group of, a very, very religious flagellants, appear and they do a ceremony in front of this cross. We went at night, staggering after a lidded flashlight, lifting legs for barbed wire, crunching on pebbles that gave us away. It's spiritual S&M, the lady joked with Freud's obvious modern lips, nervous on the irrigation ditch where this world black holes into the next. In me, the vision of the white cross suffered itself backwards and became a tree. The truth is, we don't know why they beat themselves. Her friend, the man who'd been to other planets, looked grim in his orbit and offered no shade, but begged us poets speak. Thereupon, we traveling bards, always glib and ready for improvisation, made small talk with the gods, flying beings, and fish that walk, while wires hung out of our faces, sudden arrows stuck in trees. We poets were filled with stigmata of emptiness, where our wires hung out of our profound ignorance of what life was really about in this night that moved sideways over a cliff. Seen from outer space, the design was simple. The white cross had divided us forever, and the lady who had cancer, and the man who'd been to other planets, and the husband, like a noodle, danced before us like flapjacks on the stovetop of Stonehenge, and moved to the other side of the gambling table and gambled on us poets, revealing who they really, really were, in their nightgowns, all naked, as they blew by this portable hill of Calvary in their motorcade of wind, out on a strange lark in the dark where the bone meets the air and this world meets the next. I just represent the church of me, so it could be dangerous, this stuff. All right. Gee whiz, Harry, I'll maybe read one more. Can't hear you, but you seem to say, yeah.
Yes.
So this is a poem well, it's another topic, I guess. It's called Silver. And just a reference here to for some time I studied with a Tibetan Lama, and we did things together, and this is about one of those things, rubbing silverware. silver. I see its starry swath trail off in the air as I polish knives and spoons. Years ago, I polished kitchen silver with the Tibetan Lama Rinpoche, who spit and rubbed and showed me the magic sparks that fly from the ends of forks and knives. And then he whispered, "And do you know what is the most beautiful thing in the world?" He smiled like a jade gate. It is the woman. I was both stunned and pleased, and thought that he was either a really wise man or a very good comedian. And I have carried the buried axe handle of this knowledge until night as I watch you take off your clothes. Gusts of night mental fly off your body. You turn, and the silver trap within me snaps shut at the core.
Thank you, Doug. I love your
Yeah.
poetry. You were fabulous. This is one of your best readings. I've seen you read a number of times, and I love your feeling of your willingness to explore, whether it's, Mount Whitney or Brazil or, the astral projection poem that you were talking about, the inner and the outer, and you have such a vast knowledge, and you're just such a clear thinker, and you go off on these, these trips, inner trips, and even though they may be spiritual and visual, you just have such great clarity in bringing them to us. And it's really a revelation to me to hear you with such conciseness. And I know some of it may go back to your training as being a lawyer when you was at Yale, where you studied with Alan Dershowitz, but all of your sense of logic and good thinking, but you just seemed to be something that was, I don't know, it was real, but yet it was spiritual, this reading. And I love it. Let me ask you a couple of questions.
By the way, thank you, Harry. I wish you could write my PR, but
You got it right there.
I don't have any PR.
You're good at that yourself, but when did you write your first poem?
I'm sorry?
When did you write your first poem?
Well, actually, when I heard you interview Jerry, I thought of that. I wrote a poem that I felt an image, like when I was in my teens. I didn't start, younger. I remember I had a tennis racket, and I saw this tree. It was about a tree, Harry. Okay, this is very tender. I kind of fell in love with the tree, and it was about, I like the phrase, a flowering tree. So I wrote about this tree and, with my tennis racket. So, and then I studied in college, and I had Harold Bloom, which was great. I mean, he's a well-known romantic poet guy. And I majored in English, but I didn't have a sense of purpose to be a scholar. So I went to law school, which I guess you go if you don't have much purpose. And and then I became a lawyer of some sort in Northern California. And but I got turned on to the creative world by rock and roll. So I had a band for a while, and I thought it was a pretty good band, but maybe other people didn't. I don't know. I had about 4 or 5 gigs, and then I moved to LA, and I stopped playing because LA, guess what? There's about 80,000 people that play better. And so I started doing, performance poetry. You know how Charles Webb was talking about stand-up poetry? Well, I joined a group of poetry readers that, we'd write stuff, but we had the pleasure of performing them. I wouldn't call that acting, but it's some type of performing, right? And so, I had a lot of fun. Then I came back to literary poetry, and I'll mention a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, Laurel Ann Bogan, definitely held my hand to get back into the literary world, where I definitely want to be. I'm sorry to use that word, literary, but I want to say, by the way, Harry, to anyone that doesn't know on your thing, is a member of a fabulous press that prints great books by yourself and others. So I'm not aspiring to Coenga Press, but I'm gonna push out a book before too long.
Well, thank you, Doug. And you mentioned loving that tree and then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, and I love that first poem you wrote to Janet. It was a lovely poem. And then the tennis racket, what attracts you to poetry? Why do you go to poetry?
Well, I do. I actually, I'm living up here, by the way, in Ojai, and I often attend the readings that Phil Taggart and Marcia Villalobos do in Ventura via Zoom. Guess what? It's kind of convenient. So I forgot your question. What was about?
What is it about poetry that attracts you?
Well, poetry to me, particularly the older I get, is more and more soul. And I'm so lucky. When I had an education at college in English department, and I read some, good stuff of classical, I didn't really receive it. I would get magnetized by it. But now I can really feel it. Like in Jerry's Street Sides, I was right there, right? And experiencing the bouncing off of the movie business.
I am awe of you studying with Harold Bloom. I love Harold Bloom. He's one of the late Harold Bloom was one of the top 2 literary critics along with Helen Bendler, but he just has my great esteem. Jennifer, I see you on there. Would you like to say something to Doug or to Jerry?
I would. I was really moved by both of your poems. I've never experienced astral projection, but I feel like I have an insight into it now. And I've been in Los Angeles for over 20 years now. I grew up on the East Coast. I spent several years in Chicago, but seeing in my mind's eye exactly what you were talking about with actors lined up, going through their lines, ready to, have their dreams plopped into their laps. It was lovely because in the last year, obviously those street side scenes haven't been available to us, but they are through your language and through your art. I did want to pop on a little early because those of you that are watching, thank you all on Zoom for being with us. It's fantastic. We really appreciate it. Bob Beecher also wants to come on. So as I bring him over, I do want to share this coming Tuesday at 11 o'clock, we're going to be speaking with Harry and Denise Grayson and a filmmaker that Harry worked with on one of his most recent short films, Carry Tiger to Mountain. And I want to invite all of you to join us for that as well. Harry can get you the Zoom information, or certainly you can reach out to us at Creative Chaos at MPTF.com, and we'll send you that Zoom information. That's Tuesday at 11. And the residents here will be treated to a festival screening of it live on 1390 over the weekend.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Bob, is it time for Bob to come on, or did you want to say something, Bob?
Yeah, Harry, I wanted to jump on before your show was over. Hiya, Doug. Hiya, Jerry.
Hello.
Hi. I've been in and out of your poetry over the last hour. Caught about the last 10 minutes, Doug, of your work, which is just wonderful. Enjoyed hearing what Harry had to say about it as well. I absolutely agree. And Harry, I wanted to congratulate you on number 50. That's amazing.
Well, thank you. And I know, oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Bob. Did you want to continue? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, it's having your show on Creative Chaos for the 50 episodes has been such a blessing to so many of us. So many residents have told us, I didn't really know a lot about poetry. I really wasn't into poetry. And I started listening to Harry's show, and I love poetry, and I'm reading poetry, and I've really gotten into it. It's really made it a beautiful addition to my life. So in just 1 year, Harry, you've had such a wonderful impact on this community. We're so grateful.
Thank you, Bob. And I know it's 2 o'clock or 1 minute after, so I won't continue long, but I just want to once again thank Jennifer Clymer, the Director of Media, Director of Channel 22, for asking me to do this in the first place. And also I want to thank both Jennifer and Bob for, as I've said many times before, their loving support of the creative. And, I think poetry is good in terms of COVID-19 because, if you're an actor, you do dialogue with someone, but a poem, or if you're doing a reading, you can do 15 minutes, you can do a half hour, you could do an hour. So it's really a continuation and a deepening of our a knowledge and a love of language. And it's nice to see into each one of your homes too when we come. I know Jerry lives, I believe, in Studio City, and Doug, as he said, in Ojai. So we're really, and there was a woman I noticed in one of the chats, Jamie O'Halloran, she watched this show from Ireland today. So it's really been a wonderful time for me. It exalts me, and I love poetry, and it's really a service to poetry, and it gives us a chance to give back to MPTF, which is, as many of you know, its 100th anniversary, and so it has a legacy of helping all of us and many more that we don't even know about, and it has a legacy of continuing that act of giving from one generation to the next over those 100 years. And Bob Beecher is our CEO and president, and he's a major important person in terms of MPTF, obviously. So that's my show for today. Thank you, Jerry Garcia. Thank you, Doug Knott. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Bob Beecher.
Thank you all.